Hello friends, today I'm going to show you a game I played online sometime in January 2013. This game is very interesting simply because it has a very nice idea in the Danish Gambit. Uh, the game began with me playing white, of course. I played e4 and my opponent played e5. Just to let you know that the board on the right is the variation board where I would show you important variations and certainly helpful in studying a few known variations. Anyway, coming back to the point, I played d4. It's the standard Danish. My opponent took on d4 and I played c3. Now my opponent thought that I must have prepared all the variations of the Danish. So he did not want to go into the Danish Gambit accepted variations. So he played the move d5. So he avoided all the Danish Gambit accepted lines. He must have thought that I've come prepared. So he played d5, and the right way to continue is e takes d5, and my opponent took with the queen. I played c takes d4. My opponent chose to attack the pawn one more time. You should always in chess ask yourself, what does my opponent want to do? Every time your opponent moves, you should ask, what is opponent wanting to do? So here if you see, my pawn is attacked twice by the knight and the queen and defended once. So my opponent wants to win the pawn. I played knight f3. So now the point is that the queen and the knight attack the pawn, and my knight and my queen defended. So when a piece is attacked twice and defended twice, you should not take it. So my opponent played bishop g4. Now the idea here is pretty clear. My opponent wants to take on the knight, thereby removing this defender, and then try and win the pawn on d4. I played bishop e2. Now here there is a well-known variation which I want to show you. My opponent did not fall for it. He was a good player. On the variation board, if you see, if black proceeds with his plan to win the pawn on d4 by playing bishop takes f3, I play bishop takes f3, and now if queen takes d4, black may think he's just won a pawn, but in fact he's losing. After the move bishop takes c6 check. So after bishop takes c6, black loses his queen. So my opponent, I'm sure he saw this, and so he did not fall for it. And I want you to learn this variation. But my opponent, coming back to the point, did not fall for it. My opponent continued with long castle. So now he's putting more pressure on this d4 pawn. I played knight to c3, gaining an initiative on his queen. And my opponent played queen a5. Now I have to develop my piece and add more protection to d4. I played bishop to e3. And my opponent played bishop b4. The idea is pretty simple. He has attacked my knight twice, so he wants to win a pawn again. Now here is the main idea why I wanted you to see this game. The idea is to use the open file. That's what, as a Danish player, that's what a player wants to do. So I decided to castle. My opponent took on c3 and I took back. And now my opponent played queen takes c3. So he has won the pawn, but now you'll see the idea. I played rook c1, attacking his queen with an initiative. He took his queen back to a5, and now follows a brilliant continuation. Actually, I had prepared this line many months ago, but here was my chance to actually see if it works, and it did. So I played rook takes c6. So I've given a pawn, and now I'm giving the exchange. So if you see, I'm a pawn down, and I have 5 pawns for my opponent's 6 pawns, and I've just given my rook for his knight. So effectively I'm an exchange down. But now I have a brilliant idea prepared. I played knight to e5. Now the idea of knight e5 is of course to double attack the bishop. If you see, my knight and my bishop, of course my queen, they all attack the bishop, and of course the knight threatens to take on f7 as well as c6. So it's a very good idea I had prepared. Now my opponent thought that first he would exchange the bishop, so he played bishop takes e2, attacking my queen. So I can't go ahead and play the forking move. I took the bishop, queen takes e2, and now my opponent thought that he could stop both the threats. Of course, knight to h6 doesn't stop knight takes c6. So my opponent played the move queen to d5. Queen to d5, of course, protects c6 as well as f7, what my knight had threatened. But as they say, when a piece moves, it stops doing something that it was doing earlier. The queen was necessary for the protection of his king. Now the safety of his king is compromised, and I really thought that this was excellent. The preparation I had made worked out. Now what follows here is an interesting mate in 4 sequence. Now I want you to pause the video and try to find out the mate in 4 sequence, and you can pause the video now. So I'm sure you were able to spot the continuation. The game continues. Queen a6 check, and here my opponent resigned, because I'm sure he was a good player, as I mentioned, and he saw the continuation. He resigned. But I'll show you on the variation board what happens afterwards. This is a check that invokes a forced response, so king b8, and now my rook can swoop into action with rook b1. That's what happened. Rook b1 check, and now of course if king a8 queen b7 is mate, so he must play queen b5. And now should you take the queen? Well, the point is you need not take the queen. The queen is pinned, and you can follow it up with a nice combination. You can play knight takes c6 check. I repeat, the queen is pinned to the rook, so of course by the rook, so he cannot take the knight. That forces him to play king to a8 and queen takes a7 pawn and checkmate. It's a brilliant combination, and I thought that the idea worked. Now I want you to replay this video and then write down the moves. I hope you enjoyed the game.